Today. And we have Vincent here from Cisco. Thank you for joining us again, Vincent. Really appreciate your time. And you've woken up early because you're over in Aussie, but we know that you don't mind getting out of bed to share what you have to share today. So we're talking about free security health checks with Cisco, but we're really going to be talking about, we'll talk about that, but we'll also be talking about cybersecurity trends, where they're at, what you should be looking for, and how you can do some simple checks for yourself as well. And then we'll be talking about this offer that Cisco has been put forward, which is you should take advantage of. I mean, this is one of the things that as we continue to become more automated, as more artificial intelligence is brought in, disruptive technologies is fed into the world, so too does our cybersecurity need to increase as we become more and more digital. So make sure that you've got that foundational structure in your business, because we heard a story a week ago from one of our guests where they didn't have that in place and they've had to build a whole new site. So you don't want that to be you at all. And Vincent's probably cringing. Oh God, that's his worst case scenario. But it does happen because I think as small businesses, we don't think about security sometimes. We think, oh, I know how to make this really well, or this is my service. Oh, that's boring, but super important. So if you want to ask Vincent some questions today, make sure that you use the Q&A function or the chat function or the comment section, because I know a lot of y'all have been streaming with us online on the social media channels. So Vincent, thank you for joining us here this morning.
Thanks for that. Okay, so let me share my screen real quick.
Yes, let's do it.
Oh, one moment.
Oh,
Apologies.
no, we're not in a rush. We're not in a rush. We're okay here.
Seems like I need to give permission in order to share this. So.
Oh no, you might have to
come
back.
Yeah,
check this. Yeah.
This is the first time I've used Zoom actually to share my slides. So sorry, give me one moment, guys.
The classic. Do you know what's funny is I had Google on once, and they couldn't figure out how to share, because I think what happens is folks like Cisco and Google and Microsoft and some of the big players, they have all their own video conferencing platforms, and so they don't use platforms like this. And so then when they come onto our channel and they've got to use Zoom, it's like this massive thing where they can't figure out how to use the platform. But I get a bit of a kick out of it, to be honest, because it makes them all seem human, doesn't it? So he's just logging on and logging back off. We did check. I thought we did check it, but maybe we didn't. We were just sitting there having a chin wag before the session. That was our fault. So apologies, folks, but do stay with us, because this is an important topic. I can't stress it enough. And don't forget that on Fridays, actually, let me get a little bit of here. I've got a moment to get you in. On Fridays on our Facebook channel, so we've got a Facebook community group, you can actually put up your special offers that you have going for your business. So if you have like some kind of sale happening, then feel free to post on that on the Fridays on our social media Facebook group, community group page. It's called Digital Boost Community. So do sign up. You can chat with fellow business owners here in Aotearoa, share your experiences, share your products or your knowledge. We'd love to have you be a part of that community. So thanks, you figured it out.
Okay, awesome. Yep, thanks for that, Anna Marie, and thanks for your patience, everyone. So today I'll be talking to you guys about, of course, your cybersecurity, right? But more importantly, the question is, are you guys protected from all of these cyber attacks that we're seeing, happening everywhere, right? So the agenda for today, very simple. I'm going to talk about, what are today's cybersecurity trends and challenges that we're seeing at the moment. How does Cisco come into this with our cloud security solution umbrella? And also lastly, something that you guys can do right now is, test whether you are actually at risk of, experiencing one of these cyber attacks. And that's through doing a free health check with us here at Cisco. And of course, at the end, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. So if we take a look at the trends that we're seeing at the moment, right? So this is one of the surveys that was done across SMBs in New Zealand, so small, medium-sized businesses. And what we found was that 81% of New Zealand SMBs are actually more worried about cybersecurity than they were 12 months ago. And there's a very good reason for that, right? It's because they now understand the implications of what would happen if they were to experience a major cyber incident. So 73% of SMBs believe that if they were to actually experience a serious cyber incident, that could potentially end their business, right? So it's quite a big problem. And if this is something that's in the top of your mind as well, in terms of your concerns around cyber attacks, you're not the only one. This is happening across a lot of businesses in New Zealand. So if we take a look at here as well, this survey was actually pushed out to a lot of other countries, right, across Asia Pacific. But if we focus specifically on New Zealand, right, 87% of SMBs feel like they're actually exposed to cyber attacks. So they could be, phishing, malware, crypto mining, all this other stuff. And also, if we take a look at the right side, 74% of New Zealand SMBs have actually suffered from a cyber incident within the last 12 months. And that, along with India, these are the two highest regions experiencing cyber attacks across Asia Pacific. Now, I don't know the exact reason as to why New Zealand and India is so particularly high, but it is just what it is. So it's very important that New Zealand businesses are aware of this, and they are prepared in securing their users and their data and their business. So if we take a look at, well, all of these cyber attacks are being experienced, what do they comprise of, right? So here's a breakdown. 85% of SMBs have experienced malware attacks. 70% of them experience phishing attacks, 68% DNS tunneling, 64% DDoS, and then so forth. So you can see businesses are not only experiencing just one or two types of attacks, they're actually experiencing multiple types of attacks. Right, and this is where these malicious organizations are really focusing on, is targeting these smaller, small-sized, mid-sized businesses, because they know that oftentimes these businesses don't have that security posture in place to really secure their users and their data, right? Compared to, say, your enterprise users who have a full security stack solution, full security IT team there to protect their data. For the SMB mid-sized guys, that might not be the case, which is why we're seeing more and more attacks targeting the smaller mid-sized businesses. So if we take a look at the market trends at the moment, that's adding more complications to this, right? I'm going to be focusing on two today. One being the mass adoption of cloud applications, right, such as Salesforce, Office 365, Dropbox, and a whole heap of other ones. I'm sure you guys are all using different types of cloud applications to run your business, which is awesome. But again, with these cloud applications, they also bring in certain security risks, which I'll talk about later. And of course, the second trend is more hybrid remote workers, right? Which I'm sure everyone across the globe, especially in New Zealand right now as well, we're all experiencing this. So with these two trends, of course, it's going to impact your day-to-day operation for your business, right? So you might be figuring out, okay, well, I have to figure out how to, work with my teammates now that everyone's working from home on their own, laptop and telepresence and all that. But from a security perspective, there's also new challenges that arise from this as well. So to understand this, we first have to go back, say, 5 or 10 years ago, or even just before COVID. So this is what your typical office would look like, right? So you have an office, all of your users are working in the office, they're connected into your Wi-Fi, that's connected to your firewall, right? And so whenever your users are doing anything or working using the internet, their traffic is going to, of course, go through that firewall, so they're getting that protection when they're accessing the internet. Now, if we fast forward today, everyone's now, all of a sudden working from home. And so rather than being connected to your office firewall, they're actually connected to their own home Wi-Fi. And oftentimes, I assume 99% of the time, those guys working from home aren't sitting behind their own personal firewall, right? And so without that, they actually don't have that protection that they would have gotten if they were working in the office, right? And they might just be relying on, say, antivirus on their laptop, which is good, but it's definitely not enough to protect them from all of those different types of cyber attacks that, we had a look at earlier. So one of the ways that businesses were able to secure their remote users is really to provide everyone with VPN, right? So how this works is essentially, you have firewall at your office, you provide VPN to all of your remote users. When your remote users turn on the VPN, all of the traffic will be backhauled back into that office, and then through that security stack or through that firewall out into the internet. And so essentially, they're getting the same protection as they would if they were sitting right at the office, right? Now, the only challenge that comes with this is what happens when your users don't turn on the VPN? And this is exactly what we're seeing with a lot of different customers across New Zealand, but also in Australia where I am, where the businesses, they have the firewall, right? They provision VPN to their remote users, but hey, guess what? No one's turning it on. And the reason for that is because, well, 80% of the applications being used today are actually in the cloud, right? And so this is where the mass adoption of cloud applications comes in, where your users, your remote users, can actually access those cloud applications without having to use VPN. And so originally VPN was designed for remote users to access those on-premise applications, but now that everything's in the cloud, well, users don't really have to turn on VPN. And so if they don't have to, they're probably not going to, right? And so this causes a huge security risk for the business, because if they're not connecting onto the VPN, they're not passing through your firewall, or then they're not really protected. And so what would happen if one of your remote users was to receive a phishing email? They click on a phishing link, it takes them to a malicious domain that could potentially cause them to download a malware or even lose their credentials, right? So quite serious implications here. But let's just say that we're in a perfect world, all of your users would still connect onto the VPN. Well, that would actually still cause a problem, because you can imagine all of your remote users connecting onto the VPN, but rather than accessing the on-premise applications, they're again going back out into those onto the internet, into those cloud applications. And so what happens there is it causes a bottleneck at your office, right? On your firewall, on your router. And so that's going to impact your application performance, right? Of course, no one likes using slow applications. So it's just going to give your users, or your remote users, another reason as to not want to turn on the VPN. And again, when they're not on the VPN, when they're working from home, when they're solely just relying on that antivirus on their device, they are a huge security risk to the business, right? So what can you do about it? Well, this is where a solution like Umbrella comes in. So Cisco Umbrella is essentially our cloud-delivered security solution that protects anyone who accesses the internet, regardless of where they are. So regardless of whether they're in the office, whether they're at home, whether they're at a cafe, and also regardless of what device they're on. So it could be on laptop or even your mobile devices, right? And also regardless of what your users are trying to do on the internet, whether they're trying to use certain cloud applications, or whether they're trying to just do general browsing, say on Google, Facebook, Reddit, or whatever. So all of this, they're going to be protected. Now, from the user's end, they get that protection all the time. They don't have to really turn on VPN or anything like that. From the business's side, well, now you don't have to worry about whether your users are protected or not, right? Or whether they're turning on the VPN or not, because Umbrella runs in the background all the time, protecting your user. But that protection follows that user again, wherever they go. So you don't have to worry about that, right? And secondly, with this protection, of course, comes visibility as well. So not only are you protecting your users, you can also see their internet traffic. So for example, what type of websites they're visiting. You could potentially see whether one of your employees is going on to, say, social media all day, watching YouTube videos all day. But also from a security perspective, you can see, okay, are any of my users being targeted by phishing emails, or are they using certain unsecured cloud applications, or are they infected with malware? So I'll explain a bit about how all that works. But how Umbrella works overall is, at the core of it, it uses DNS as a form of protection. So we call this the DNS layer security. But in order to understand this, we first have to know, okay, well, what exactly is DNS, right? So DNS is really the first step for any device to connect onto the internet. And this is used by almost every single smart device out there. As long as they're connecting to the internet, they're most likely going to be using DNS most of the time. And so to give you an example of how DNS works, say you're on your browser, Google Chrome, type in youtube.com. What your computer does is it then sends a DNS request to one of the DNS servers out there on the internet. One of the DNS servers will then find the IP address that matches youtube.com, sends that IP address back to your computer, and that's how you land on youtube.com, the homepage of youtube.com. Right, so on a very high level, that's how DNS works. Now, how Umbrella comes into this is Umbrella sits right between your users and the internet. So every time they try to do anything on the internet, they make, of course, a DNS request. So that DNS request first have to pass through our Umbrella cloud. And when it passes through our Umbrella cloud, we're going to check to see, okay, is this DNS request going to take the user somewhere safe or malicious? Now, if it's malicious, then of course that DNS request gets blocked, preventing your user from actually going onto that bad website, right? Essentially protecting your user. So this is really good, for example, for phishing emails, right? Even if you have a phishing email come through, your user accidentally clicks on it, well, it's going to, of course, try to take them to that dodgy website. Umbrella is going to pick it up and say, well, okay, well, this DNS request is taking this user somewhere unsafe. That gets blocked. Your user is going to then be taken to a page where it says, hey, you've been blocked from accessing this site because it's linked to a phishing domain or so forth. So it's not only going to block your user from accessing those malicious domains, but it's actually also going to tell them what's the reason, right? And then from your end, from the business side, you can see who's been trying to access different types of malicious websites. And so if you see a user who's potentially always trying to go on a phishing website, it's most likely that that user is being targeted by multiple phishing campaigns, right? So we often say that Umbrella is our first line defense, right? But it's also our last line of defense as well, in that, let's just say you already have malware in your device, right, on your laptop, or someone randomly picks up a USB on the floor one day, plugs it into the computer, and surprise, to get infected with malware. Well, what the malware will generally try to do is communicate back out to their command and control server, right? So communicate out to, say, their like mothership, where they're telling the mothership, hey, I've just infected this device. Tell me what's the next steps. Or they might download more malicious files, or they might exfiltrate data, right? Now, the mothership is somewhere around the internet, but if you have Umbrella in place, what happens is this malware will try to communicate back out to their command and control server. Umbrella is going to see, okay, well, something is trying to communicate out to a malicious domain. I'm not going to allow that. So that gets blocked. And that essentially neutralizes that malware from doing any further potential harm to you guys, right? So that's one way of how we block malware from actually infecting or doing more damage to certain devices or businesses. Now, this is a really interesting statistic, which shows that 90% of malware attacks use DNS as part of their attacks. So you can imagine, just by having DNS security with Umbrella, you're essentially protecting yourself, your business, your users from 90% of the malware attacks out there. So DNS security is a very simple concept to understand, but it's very versatile in its capabilities in terms of protecting your users. And it's actually also very simple to set up, which I'll share a little bit more later. But it's also surprising that 68% of organizations actually don't monitor their DNS, right? Considering that just by having DNS security, you're blocking 90% of malware. It's quite shocking to see this number, but again, not a lot of people are aware of this. So, that's why sessions like this is really good, is to show you guys that, hey, just by having DNS, you're already protecting yourself from 90% of malware attacks.
Can you repeat what DNS stands for us, Vincent?
Yeah, so DNS is domain name system. So essentially, do you want me to explain to you how it works again?
Yeah, well, I mean, we just had a request, like it was just like they just didn't remember what it was. So yeah, that's okay. If you've already gone through it, of course, we don't need to go through it again. We just wanted a reminder on that acronym.
Yeah, definitely. No worries. So yeah, with DNS, just remember that anything you do on the internet, on any device, it's most likely going to be using DNS, right? So every time you go on a website, DNS request. Every time you go on a cloud application, DNS request. And so with Umbrella, it's going to check every single time you make a request. It's going to see whether that request is going to take you somewhere safe or malicious. Again, if it's malicious, that connection or that request gets blocked straight away, protecting your users from any of those harmful destinations out there on the internet. So yeah, good question. But yeah, let's keep going. So, there's a lot of different vendors out there that provide DNS security, right? It's not just Cisco. So why should you partner up with Cisco to secure your business compared to the other vendors out there, right? So one of the key differentiators that sets Cisco apart from all of the other security vendors out there is the fact that we're backed by Telos, right? So what is Telos? Well, Telos is the world's largest commercial threat intelligence group. So just to give you guys some numbers, we block about 20 billion threats every single day. That's 20 times more than any other security vendor out there. So when it comes to the sheer number of threats detected and blocked, no one can even come close to competing with Cisco, right? And that's simply because, of course, we have the largest market share. So we are the largest security vendor out there. We're also the most trusted, in that 100% of the 100 Fortune 100 companies use Cisco security, use Cisco Telos to protect their business. And so what we often say is, when you use Umbrella, right, you're essentially getting the same threat intelligence as you would if you were sitting in an office at, Facebook or Amazon or Google, right? Simply because all of those guys use Cisco security, and all Cisco security customers are backed by Telos, right? So they have access to this Telos threat intelligence. So, we've got about more than 400 full-time threat researchers and data scientists every single day. That's the day-to-day job, is to go out in the internet and search for those new threats out there that we can then add into our database to protect our users. So by having Umbrella, you're essentially backed by, the world's largest threat intelligence group that 100% of the Fortune 100 companies use to protect their own data. So this is really, enterprise grade cybersecurity that you guys are getting access to just by having Umbrella. All right, so overview of, how Umbrella works. Well, firstly, you're going to be able to learn, right, and have the intelligence to see these attacks before they happen. Now, when I say you, I actually mean Telos, right? Because Telos is actually doing all of the work to be able to detect these threats before they ever reach you guys. So that's through, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all that tech stuff to really be able to detect and identify these threats. And so I think the industry average for a malware to be detected in a network is roughly averaging 100 days. With Cisco security, it drops down to roughly 3.7 hours, right? And that's simply due to the fact that we have such a large database of threat intel that we are able to pick up on these things much, much faster. And so that's one piece. Secondly is that visibility, right? So with Umbrella, you'll be able to see your users' internet traffic wherever they are, whether they're in the office, whether they're working from home. So you'll be able to see what type of websites they're accessing. And this is really good, not only from a security perspective, but also from a content filtering perspective. So you can also use Umbrella to do content filtering. So for example, You don't want your users to go on, say, social media during work hours, or gambling websites during work hours, right? So this is something that you can deploy right away that restricts them from doing that, right? So this is something aside from the security perspective. And then next we have, of course, the ability to block threats, right? Which is obviously very important. So being able to detect and block those threats before your users ever make it to those malicious destinations, right? So that's an overview of Umbrella. Now, I mentioned before, Umbrella is actually quite simple to deploy as well. In fact, on a very simple deployment, right? So if you're not an enterprise business or even mid-size, if you're just small, it actually takes about averaging 5 minutes to deploy Umbrella to get started, right? And of course, if you want to deploy onto your remote users and so forth as well, it takes a little bit longer. But again, this is very simple to deploy compared to some of the other, IT stuff that you might have to set up, right? So how can you get started, right? So the question before was, are you protected from these cyber attacks? Now, one way that you can check this is to do a free health check with Cisco. So how it works is you essentially sign up for a 14-day free trial of Umbrella, and that essentially allows you to do a health check on your network. So how it works is you sign up for the trial, you then deploy it right into your networks. It takes about 5 minutes to deploy, a little bit longer if you have a lot of remote users. But then afterwards, once that's deployed, it's really sort of set and forget, right? So you set it all up, and then it will automatically start to see those DNS requests being made by yourself, as well as all of the other users within your company. And then you'll be able to see, okay, does anyone have live malware on the network, right? Because if they do, then that malware might be communicating back out to their command and control server. Well, that's when Umbrella picks it up, right? Again, with phishing emails, do any of them, or have they all received any types of phishing emails where they've clicked on the link and it's taking them to somewhere malicious? Next is malicious websites. Are they going on to any malicious websites or using any unsecure cloud applications?
I've got a question here, Vincent.
Yeah,
it's kind of going back to that Umbrella kind of aspect. It says, is Umbrella applicable to a really small enterprise that has a couple of remote workers and no office?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. So absolutely, Umbrella actually doesn't require any hardware as well. So it's pure SaaS software, so you can just deploy it onto your remote users. But if you have an office as well, you can actually deploy it onto your firewall, and that way it protects anyone who is sitting under that firewall. But if you don't have an office, that's fine. Just install it onto your remote devices, and it's good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks for the question. So again, with this health check, it's real-time data talking about your network, right? So this is not in a simulated demo environment. When you run this health check, it's actually information about your real life environment. So all the DNS requests are real, and hopefully you don't see any malware DNS requests, but if you do, then those malwares are also real. But at least you know that if you see it, it's already been taken care of by Umbrella. So to give you guys an example of what the dashboard looks like, very easy to understand, right? You don't need a security IT team to manage this. We've made it very simple, so even small business owners can really understand how to use it, right? So you see the top left here, total requests or all requests. That essentially means all of the DNS requests that are being made from your users, regardless of where they are. All blocked requests means security blocks plus your content filtering blocks, so like social media, so forth. And then more importantly, your security blocks as well, where you get to see, okay, well, if you see something going on there, which most of the time you probably will, then it means that your users are probably going onto these malicious domains. And if that's the case, well, it's a good thing that you have Umbrella because they're protected from it. But if you didn't have Umbrella, it means that your users are actually landing on these malicious domains, where again, they could potentially download malware or lose their credentials and so forth. So other things you can do, of course, is sort by the top destination. So you can see, okay, which malicious website are most of my users going onto the most, also by identity, and figure out, okay, who in my office is clicking on the most phishing links, right? So quite a lot of things you can do here. Of course, this is just one feature. There's so many other features on here that you can do to really get a granular view of your network's health. So another thing is, you can click into it further for those security blocks and see, okay, what are they, right? So they're malware blocks, okay, phishing, command and control, and then you might have some crypto mining. So unless your business sort of operates with crypto mining, you probably shouldn't be seeing that, right? And you can actually click into it further. So for example, malware blocks, you can click into it and see, okay, which user accessed it at which time, on which day, on what device, and also why is this considered a malicious destination, right? So a lot of information, not only about your internal users, but also about the destination that they're trying to reach, right? So I guess the takeaway from this is, yeah, if you're unsure of what your network health looks like, just sign up for a free umbrella trial, run the health check. The moment you turn it on, you're going to start seeing that DNS traffic run through. You're going to start seeing information straight away, right? So sometimes, you trial different products, you might not know whether you're getting value out of it. Well, the second you turn on DNS, you turn on Cisco Umbrella, you start seeing that DNS information come through. You're going to start seeing that value straight away. Even if you don't see any security blocks straight away, you're still going to have some visibility over, okay, well, what types of websites are my users going on to? Are they protected, and so forth? But yeah, you can find this. I think the Digital Boost page will have a link to this that you can access, or you can go onto our Cisco page as well, or just Google, Cisco Umbrella Trial and get access to that. But if you have any questions today, I'm happy to answer that right now. If not, yeah, feel free to reach out to myself at any time as well. And then I'm happy to assist with any further questions. But yeah, that's it from my end.
Fantastic, Vincent. Thanks so much. You always provide such a great session that we can follow along with, even if we're not very familiar with cybersecurity. So it's fantastic. Question here from Claire, which says, I have a similar question. Does this still apply to businesses which is run? So this is talking about that umbrella. This is talking about that situation before. So does this still apply to businesses which are run from home and which are not connected to the computer at the business site? I run email, etc. from home and the booking system at the business, but the two are not connected.
Okay, so from my understanding, if they're trying to connect their device when they're at home, absolutely, right? It doesn't require you to connect onto your corporate network or anything like that. As long as your device is using the internet, you're going to be secure. And this also works for, say, even if you're not a business, right? Just by running Umbrella on your personal device, you're going to be secure from getting your credentials stolen, or even a virus or something entering your computer. So quite versatile here.
Oh, fantastic. I think that, yeah, it's for businesses like yourself, Claire, I think this is really fantastic that you're looking into this, because it is so important. You're working out there in the community and you're gathering data from people, and that data is, not only should be protected for their own personal reasons, but compliance wise, there are lots of new legislation that's been put in place that make sure that you have to follow a lot of guidelines. So it's wonderful that you've joined us here today and are asking these questions. So thank you so much for contributing to this session. We've just got a comment from Jason Jacobs over at LinkedIn saying, Cisco kid in the Fare Haremai, Vincent. So maybe you know Jason, maybe you don't, maybe he's just checking in, but I thought I should pass on that message to you. Lovely. Yeah, it's lovely to have you here in the house with us, Vincent.
Awesome. Thanks.
Kia ora. So, and we'll give everybody just a moment to waffle on here for a second. Well, I'll waffle on. We'll let them type. And just so that we don't miss any other questions. Okay, perfect. Appreciate the answer. Yes, I am so aware of the legislation and the risk Thanks for a good session. You're very lucky. You're very welcome. Would you have to sign up for Umbrella and download it as multiple users for unconnected computers? Okay. Yeah. Or can you get one package or what have you? How does that work?
Yeah, so with Umbrella, there's two ways, right? You can either attach it onto your firewall, which essentially protects all of your users underneath it, or you can deploy it for individual devices, right? And so how Umbrella works is it's for each individual user rather than device. So for example, you have one person in your company who might use 5 or 6 devices, but they will only still be using one license of Umbrella. Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, if she's the only one in her business, or if they're the only one in their business, they would just need one license,
Yep.
and then they would push it across all those devices.
That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's wonderful, because sometimes that does get a little bit tricky, doesn't it? When you need multiple licenses, for every device that you own. And, we all know we've got, at this point, we've got our phone, we've probably got our laptop, some people use an iPad somewhere for some of their data collection for their clients. So yeah, probably multiple devices in some of these situations. So that's great information there. Yeah, I'll just jump back. I can't see the chats while I'm in the Zoom, unfortunately. So I'll just jump back and forth and just make sure I haven't missed anybody. Looking good. Looking good. Feel free to keep dropping those questions in. If you find that we finished this session and you're like, I have a question. Look, you can do a number of things. You can contact Cisco. They're always happy to help. They've got a great support team. Alternatively, you can always contact our support team at support@digitalboost.co.nz. We do have actual phone lines. We can do video conferencing. We can do whatever you like, whichever kind of medium works best for you or platform works best for you to communicate with us on. We can go via email. So do reach out and we will set up a time to communicate with you and get your questions answered. We're here to help. Yeah, fantastic. Well, what a fantastic offer. Obviously, Cisco is a Digital Boost Alliance member. They're very passionate about small business here in New Zealand, and we're appreciative of that. Players like yourselves coming to the table and helping small businesses make sure that they've got the systems in place to secure their data, their information, and build their business and scale up securely. So thank you so much, Vincent, for joining us again here on Digital Boost. We appreciate your time and your valuable expertise.
Yep. No, pleasure being here. And yeah, definitely if you reach out to Cisco. So I look after the entire New Zealand. So if you reach out and say you're part of Digital Boost, I'll definitely make sure you're looked after.
Yay, thank you. We love that. Yes. So fantastic. Wonderful. Well, have a wonderful day, everybody. Ka kite. Short week for many of us. We are still here tomorrow. Do check in. We've got a great session coming up tomorrow. You can check it out if you're on social media in the pinned post at the top of the page. It'll tell you everything that we have going on every week. So do check in on the sessions that are of interest to you and reach out. If there's any content we don't have, let us know what it is and we'll get it in. Okay, thanks, Vincent. Have a wonderful day. See y'all tomorrow. Ka kite.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, or I'll say hello to you. Hello, Vincent, since you're over across the ditch. See you, mate. See you.